So first of all, welcome to Nike Valiant Labs. I was introduced to the whole concept of Women's Entrepreneurship Day by a friend of mine, Wendy Diamond, who lives in New York, who started this 3 years ago. And yesterday they had 500 women at the United Nations in New York, and there are events taking place in 144 countries around the world over the next few days. It's great, yes. Today would not have been possible without the help of a number of very key people. First of all, the very kind folks at Valiant Labs who so kindly agreed to host us, and I really want to thank Brian and Andrew who are here with us today, who've been just incredibly helpful. And thank you guys, very nice. We like our male allies, right? And the formidable Hannah Jones, who couldn't be here today, who heads up this team, was very gracious enough to offer the space to us. I also want to thank our sponsors, the Batterby Group. Sarah Batterby, you'll be hearing more from a little bit later today. Thank you, Sarah. R2C Group, one of the biggest women-owned businesses in the state of Oregon. Jane Kristen, the CEO, is here today, and so is Bianca Reed. They're over there. Wave, ladies, so they can see who you are. You'll hear more from them later, but basically R2C Group are one of the biggest direct-to-consumer television media buying and creative companies in the country. So all those great ads you see for things like Bissell and all the makeup companies and things that sell direct-to-consumer. So they specialize in helping brands scale, and they do an incredibly good job at it, and they'll be able to tell you more about that later on today. I also couldn't have done this without Voxapod and Imelda Wilson, who sat me down one afternoon a few weeks ago and got me right geared up on track, and that's why we're here today, and the whole thing has come together. She knows I'm trying to do this on top of my day job as well. I really want to thank all the panelists as well and speakers who've come. Some, like Karen John, has come from New York. Thank you, Karen, for coming all the way. Lisa Fetterman, who you will hear from later on today, came up from San Francisco last night, coming in at like 1:30 in the morning, so she's having a little bit of a lie-in today. And all the incredible panelists and volunteers that are here today to help make this a really fascinating day for all of you, and ones that you'll be able to take away some really good, helpful strategies and tips and ideas to move forward. But the real idea of today is that you also get to spend time together and to network, because I think that the peer mentoring of women helping other women is really so critical. When I first moved to Portland nearly 5 years ago, I didn't know anybody. A bit like Washington, somebody said, get a dog, you need a friend. I got our crazy dog Harper, and that started me meeting Kim Weisman, who's here today, and various other people, and it just sort of mushroomed from there. And then I started cooking for people, and that also helped as well. I got to get people around the table. And that kind of leads me to the fabulous Kathleen Poe, who I'm going to introduce. So Kathleen apparently can't cook very well, but she used to run an amazing French restaurant in Massachusetts. She also has a degree from MIT, which I think is far more important. And she's been working with Nike since 2015, and she was a consultant before that, and she works with the team here. And I'm going to let her tell you more about what they do here, just as a way of introduction.
Hi guys, thank you, Susan. We are so grateful to you for putting this together, for inviting us to be part of the day and bringing this wonderful group of people together, so thank you so much. I'm going to take just a couple minutes, tell you about the place that you're in. Thank you guys for finding your way to our warehouse in the middle of some place that probably didn't seem like necessarily where you thought you should be as you drove up. We are Nike Valiant Lab, so this is a space that is owned by Nike. We are part of sort of Nike's larger mission. We sort of obsess the piece of this mission statement that is the asterisk. So for us, the way we think about it is Nike often focuses on serving sort of the, if you think of Nike's common muse, it's probably like the 19-year-old male elite athlete. And we think about all the people who are probably not that athlete, and how can we solve the problems that folks have in their everyday lives that might have to do with movement, right? And so how do we start not with Nike's problems, but start with consumer problems, go out in the market, hunt for sort of big, painful problems that people have, test a whole bunch of different solutions really quickly and cheaply, and then see which ones stick and kind of scale them over time. That's our scope. And so we love this mission statement, and we particularly love that little asterisk in there. This is a part of our goal as a company, right? Sourcing revenue from innovation concepts. I still think about Nike as a really big shirts and shoes company, and so oftentimes innovation means what the new Air Force Ones, or sort of new materials and that type of thing, which is awesome and super important. And we think about it as, what new businesses should we be in? What is going to disrupt the company going forward, and what new opportunities exist? And so how can we think outside of the current business and think about new businesses that we can bring to life? And so some of those, as you can see, there's some product in the background over there. Some of the businesses, I'm looking at Brian, who's our communications guy, to see when I cross the line of what I'm talking about. So some of them are product related, so actually have sort of physical product related involved, and some of them are just services or marketplaces, that type of thing. So it's kind of a portfolio of stuff that we get to work on, which is a lot of fun. So similar to you guys, I think on the one hand, probably similar to a lot of you guys, we try to take a bit more of a startup approach. We realize that we have some proprietary gifts that give us a little bit of edge in the marketplace, and also probably make our life a little bit more comfortable than the entrepreneur who's out there on their own team of one. So we recognize we have a little bit of a privilege in that sense, but for the most part, our job is to obsess the consumer, test new stuff, push boundaries, basically sort of say to our senior execs, say to our senior execs, hey, actually that might not be a problem in your life as a CEO of a large company, but actually that is a problem in the life of an everyday consumer, whether that everyday consumer is types of people in this room, whether it's the types of consumers who don't have access to our product or even access to sport in emerging markets, and how do we think about them and think about them differently and try some stuff that might not seem like a logical solution in the life of an executive at Nike, but might be really compelling to somebody who looks like a very different consumer. So that's about it. This is what we exist to do. I think for you guys, hopefully, it resonates a little bit. Basically serving people. What are their needs that are going unmet that you guys can think about differently? Certainly look at Rebecca back there. I'll go. Lots of people in this room, Astrid and other folks that I know are working on, focusing on what are the needs of folks who aren't getting the bulk of the attention and the bulk of the money and the bulk of the focus, whether that's in terms of financing or products or whatever it may be. And so we're just happy to be here and be a small part of it. So welcome to our space. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for letting us be a part of this.
Okay, awesome. This couldn't really have taken place either without the help of a number of key partners who helped us make this day really come together. First and foremost, I have to really give a huge shout out to Lee McIlvaine. Congratulations. I got that right. I've been miswriting her name all week for some reason. I don't know why. Lee is the head of Mercy Corps Northwest Women's Business Center. And Lee has been a key partner. We got together because she was thinking of doing something today, as it turned out, and so was I. So we decided to join forces, which was great. So Lee is going to be a panelist this morning, and also we have representatives here from Built, from Ty, from Oregon Sports Angels. Kate Delhagen is joining us today. But first of all, I want to introduce and kick off with our first panelist. So Ashley Henry has come off a very busy few weeks. Ashley last year joined and really started, right? Business for a Better Portland. Some of you may have heard of it, some of you may not, but it's becoming a real force. It's grown to more than 300 member companies in the last year. Ashley has done just a phenomenal job in her role as Chief Collaboration Officer for Business for a Better Portland, and I'm going to introduce her first, and then we're going to welcome, you can all, I think, come up right now. So we have Astrid Salts, who is from the founder and CEO of Sarah, and also co-founder of Accelerate, the Accelerate Fund. We have Renee Shade, who's the Executive Director of the Accelerate Fund. We have Lee McIlvaine, who is the Executive Director of the Accelerate Fund. And we have Kate Delhagen. And I see Robin is here from the Accelerate Fund as well. Hi, Robin. You can ask them tough questions from the audience there.
Right. Hi, everybody. Good morning. In light of the title of today's panel, I thought I would wear my Freeland Spirits t-shirt. How many of you are fans of the women-owned, women-produced gin and whiskey down the road? If you don't know about Jill Peeler's new business, Freeland Spirits has a beautiful still that was brought in from Germany, where she makes gin right there on site, and just released their whiskey last week. In addition to it being distilled in Portland, the grain is grown by an amazing woman farmer in Wallowa County in Eastern Oregon, Corey Carmen, who also has her own Carmen Ranch beef products that you might have heard about through EcoTrust or some other organizations. I think it's sold at New Seasons as well. Before I have the panelists introduce themselves, I just want to take the point of privilege and let you know a little bit about Business for a Better Portland. We are a membership organization, as Susan said. We launched in February of 2017 with 15 companies as our founding members. And the founding board chair, you may have heard, her name is Mada Zapata. She's one of the founders of Accelerate. You're going to be hearing about Accelerate from Renee in a moment, and also works with Astrid on the Zebra movement, and is the CEO of a company called Switchboard. And I just really want to tip my hat to her for being the entrepreneur that she is and inspiring me to take a risk to be the founding ED of Business for a Better Portland. What brought us together was a common sense of a need for businesses to leverage their political and social and financial capital to create a better Portland for everyone, to create greater shared prosperity. So although I'm here moderating this panel today, we're, as an organization, we're not in the business of growing companies directly or working directly with entrepreneurs on how they grow their companies. There are great organizations that do that, and you're going to hear about them today. We're really in the business of ensuring that those busy entrepreneurs who are running their companies also have what we call a civic engagement on-ramp, which is just a very efficient way for you as a business owner or an entrepreneur to say, hey, I'm a business person. I really care about ensuring that we address the homelessness crisis in our community. I'm a business person. I really care that we modernize our transportation system and join the 21st century in Portland. But I'm too busy, quite frankly, to go to City Hall or county government or the state government. I don't have time to even figure out what all those policies should be, but I trust this organization. I'm going to join this organization. I share a lot of common values with the other companies that have joined this organization, and we're going to pool our resources, both our political capital and our financial capital, to really get involved in issues that affect the community in which I am creating a company. Because I, as an entrepreneur, can only be so successful as the company in which I'm living and in which my employees are living. And I want to make sure that my employees have access to affordable housing, that they feel safe when they're walking on the streets, and that they know that our community as a whole is going to start taking care of people who are living on the streets. So I just wanted to provide that as context, because while it is enormously important for women to get access to capital to be able to grow their companies, it's also really important that we grow companies in a community that's thriving. And so that's really what Business for a Better Portland is about, and I would certainly be happy to talk with you some other time about it. And we are trying to get to 300 members by the end of 2018, and we're only about 25 companies away. So if each of you joined Business for a Better Portland, we would meet the goal, and I could just take a vacation between now and then. So all of you have a unique role in this ecosystem of services that serves women entrepreneurs. Most of you have your own companies, some of you are investors in companies, and I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you do and what your organization does. And there are some of you who wear multiple hats, so feel free to talk about those multiple hats as well, because of course we are women, we multitask, And so it's not at all surprising that the women here have encountered challenges and chosen to create a solution. So who wants to start?
I can start. Last up, first to go. Yeah, absolutely. My name's Amanda Wilson, and I'm one of the founding board members for a nonprofit here called WomanLed. And the premise of the organization is that when you become a scalable startup and you're a female-founded company, it's really difficult to find the mentorship that you often need. And every once in a while you can find the vertical mentorship that you might need, but we find that those people are harder to find, they're harder to access, maybe can't access them on a regular basis, and or sometimes those entrepreneurs are so far down the pike they forget what it's like to be in the early stage trenches. And so what we've kind of birthed out of painful need is a really intimate community of mastermind groups of other female-founded companies that meet regularly to troubleshoot in real time, to share vetted resources, to sort of act as an informal advisory board to your company. And then also just to tell you like, hey, you're not alone. This is really bleeping hard and you're not alone. And these people become somewhat like your best friends, which is pretty incredible. So we launched last year, and we now have 3 mastermind groups. We're actually on Monday launching a group in Kurdistan, Iraq, with an organization there, and just continuing to grow. The need is so much greater than what we can supply at this point. So if you're interested in getting involved, or if you find yourself being an entrepreneur that needs that support, we'd love to help you. And then the other hat that I wear is I'm the founder and CEO of my company, Voxapod. Innovated a menstrual cup. We're a B Corp that helps girls in the developing world stay in school after they start their period. So a lot of advocacy for girls and women throughout my entire life. So proud to be here and thrilled to see all of you. This is an amazing group.
My name is Lee McElvain. I manage the Women's Business Center at Mercy Corps Northwest. Could you raise your hand if you're familiar with Mercy Corps? And what if you know the term Mercy Corps Northwest? Oh, good. That makes me so happy. A lot of people in town know who Mercy Corps is, right? We're a global humanitarian aid organization that engages in economic development activities all over the world to benefit impoverished people. By virtue of being headquartered here in Portland, we also engage in economic development right in our own backyard. So we are really happy to be able to support women entrepreneurs through a grant from the Small Business Administration. I manage the Women's Entrepreneurial Training Program at Mercy Corps Northwest. We work with a lot of very early stage entrepreneurs, people who maybe have a concept, they're in their first couple of years of operation, they need to know what kind of resources are out there for them. So I help to coordinate trainings that connect people with resources, help them get their business off the ground, and also provide them with some capital. So we have some resources that I'd like to share with everyone here today. Those are microloans for people who would otherwise not be bankable. If you're in your first year operating your business, you do not have access to capital currently, we can help you with that. We also have small business grants for people who qualify. And I know that even just a couple $1,000s can really make a big difference for folks who are trying to launch. So I'm happy to talk with everyone here about that today. Like Amanda, I wear a couple of hats, and like Ashley, I've been advocating for small business and for women for a very long time as well. I joined Mercy Corps Northwest from an organization called Oregon Tradeswomen, helping women to enter into the construction trades. I am incredibly passionate about helping women gain economic parity. For me, that means not only that we control the same number and value of economic resources as everyone else does, it also means that we get to exercise that as power and change the world that we live in. So thank you very much for being here today.
My name is Renee Shade. I'm the director of Accelerate, and right now we have a 12-month accelerator program for women entrepreneurs. We're working with women who own their businesses, and these are businesses that are scalable, so they're looking to grow national or international, and that they are post-revenue, meaning that you guys are already, your ladies, are already out selling in the market. We just graduated our first cohort this October. We've got a couple graduates in the audience. We've got Amanda. Jennifer over there, and I feel like I'm missing somebody. And cohort 2 is halfway through. We will be opening applications for cohort 3 soon, date TBD. And what our program focuses on is really a kind of quick and practical MBA. So over the course of the 12 months, we want you to get to know all of the different pieces of your business that you need to understand. The goal is that you are ultimately not running all 12 of those pieces of your business, that you are paying others to do it, but we're giving you the knowledge to run with it in the short term and then understand enough so you can work with the contractors and employees that you need to really grow this business into something substantial. We also, as Amanda talked about, there's a real loneliness with women entrepreneurs. I see nodding in the audience. I think many of us have felt it. And we seek to also fill the need for peer support in a similar way for WomanLed, but within the confines of the program. And so we take our bigger cohorts and we split them down into peer support groups of 5, and we pair them with a mentor facilitator. So the goal is that the group is actually holding itself accountable and providing resources, connections, support, constructive feedback to each other. And the mentor is there to help facilitate that process and also serve in some traditional mentoring roles. And we're industry agnostic within the room. We've got consumer product goods, food and bev, we've got service, we've got an automotive services company from cohort 1. So we really keep it pretty broad because we want to make sure that we're focused on that circle of women growing scalable businesses who have already started selling. So we've been around since February of 2017. So yeah, almost 2, wait,
Yep.
yes, thank you. Somebody do my math.
The same month as Business for a Better Portland.
Yes, great. I'm glad Ashley is keeping track. I am actually really good at that, but you wouldn't know right now. So we'll be opening that, and then we're also looking to, in 2019, be able to provide some capital. As Lee mentioned, if you're in your first year of business, it is very challenging to secure capital. The women that we work with in our cohorts may go out to find equity funding through VCs or angels. They may go out to find debt funding through traditional banks or alternative lenders such as Mercy Corps, or they might just seek to self-fund through their own sales and revenue. So one of the ways we provide for that now is on the sales front. We weave that through the entire year's worth of curriculum. We want to make sure that you are constantly cultivating your pipeline, your funnels, your processes. Installing systems and processes is one of my personal favorite and one of the program's favorite things to do, because really to increase your value as an entrepreneur, like, you are a valuable human being. I can't clone you, so to grow your business, I get to scale you through systems and processes. So we offer that now, and next year we will have a debt fund open for women entrepreneurs. Knock on wood, which isn't here sooner rather than later. So thank you.
Good morning. I'm Astrid Salts. I am a recovering nonprofit executive turned tech entrepreneur. I resigned from EcoTrust 4 years ago to take forward a company that we had incubated there, which is now called Spera. And it's a tech-enabled platform, product and service company that is concerned with scaling collaboration in sort of the global social good industry, if you will, directly inspired by an experience of an organization like EcoTrust or like Mercy Corps that is continually innovating great solutions, whether that's in food and farms or in other topic areas, but as a matter of policy doesn't really share those readily, right? And so off we went and launched a tech company, and then a number of really strange things began to happen to me personally. Fairly confident, I'd like to think. Started meeting with a bunch of investors here in town and felt like I was being condescended to. You know, I had some really interesting meetings with typically male angel investors who would basically tell me, a PhD economist, I might consider.
Say that again. I like that. I like that.
The suggestion was made to me repeatedly, I might consider hiring a boy CFO so I could draw them a hockey stick. So what happened is that, together with a few other female entrepreneurs here in town, Mada Cepeda and Jennifer, Genevieve LaMarchal and Paige Hendricks-Bruckner, we sat down and said, well, this is stupid. We're all having the same experience of not finding the kinds of investors that our companies need, and oh, by the way, we're all having the same experience of being treated like we don't know what we're talking about. and sort of having a very personal visual experience of all the statistics you read about what it's like, or have experienced yourself, what it's like raising capital while female. And so we said, well, why don't we just create the capital instrument that we need for our companies? Wouldn't it be great to have a line of credit in a company like mine that has rich customers that take a long time to make purchasing decisions, right? And out of that came the idea for the Accelerate Fund. Essentially, we just wanted to create a capital instrument for ourselves. Of course, what we did end up doing instead was creating a nonprofit organization and creating a conflict of interest for ourselves. But that's the history of the Accelerate Fund coming out of that direct experience. And the other thing that happened is, so Lana and I have this joke that every time we get in a room together, we seem to create another organization. So in March of 2017, roughly a month after the PDX and the Accelerate Fund, we found ourselves publishing with two other women, again, coincidentally women, what's become known as the Zebra Manifesto. You can find it when you Google it, Zebras Fix What Unicorns Break. And it's essentially a reflection on the experience that we were having with our companies that are really much more concerned with process innovation instead of products and behavior change, and treating our customers as community, not as something that you churn, which is just a terrible expression in the first place, right? And so we wrote down essentially our experience of building these companies that are using business to heal essential societal industries and systems. Well, it's 6,000 people stuck up their hands and said, I'm a zebra. I want to invest in zebras. I want to build a zebra. Where do I go? So we looked at each other and went, I guess we're doing an event. So we hosted DazzleCon here in Portland last November, almost exactly a year ago today.
Because a group of zebras is a dazzle.
The collective noun for a group of zebras is a dazzle. The swag is fabulous. I'm wearing the pin.
Get your pen.
And it was just a raging success. We met over at the Left Bank Annex, and about 250 people, founders, funders, and friends came together to talk about these principles of how we build better businesses that build a better world. And out of that came the need for yet another organization. So we have created Zebras Unite as essentially a global entrepreneurship support organization. And that's a bit of a mouthful. We really think of it just as providing infrastructure for people to get together around this sort of shared vision. And the funny thing is, when you project those values of how we view business and how it should show up in the world, we don't even show up as a female or feminist or female-led organization, but just by projecting those values, broadcasting those values. 70% of people came to DazzleCon were women or people of color. Big shocker, right? We lead with those values. In any event, so we're in the process of building that as a chapter-based organization and an online community that you can find off zebrasunite.com. And the goal is to create this sort of rich infrastructure for each of us to find others, find our local Dazzle, get together physically, but then also have a sort of global backbone that provides resources and useful insights. And then thirdly, we're doing a bunch of programmatic work on actually innovating more capital tools like the Accelerate Fund and other such mechanisms, and working with others in partnership to proliferate them, so that lawyers and investors get smart about these alternative ways in which we can be building businesses.
Oh, you did not hear my joke, so humor me. I said I'm, I think, pretty much likely the oldest here and definitely the grayest, so there you go, there's that. Just a couple, because of that, I'm going to hijack for a second and say a couple things, maybe ask a couple questions. First is to thank everyone here, including these panelists. I'm like, holy crap, this is why I come to things like this, because we're with our people, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great, our Dazzle. So thank everyone for showing up on a beautiful Saturday in the fall. And a quick show of hands, just to help us calibrate maybe for the day and for this panel. Who in the room is actually a sort of a founder, entrepreneur starting a business right now? So hands up, majority, half, okay. If you're not, I'm guessing you're either thinking about, who's thinking about joining a startup or starting something? You're kind of in that scratching your head, maybe have something, not sure stage. Okay. Scratching your head. I did too. It's the gray hair. I did get shampoo once this week. Might be true. Okay, and then the next question is, if you haven't yet raised your hand, I'm kind of curious, why not? Is it because you're maybe a funder or a supporter or a sponsor here today? Just out of curiosity, if you're kind of in the rest of those groups. So thank you guys for coming, because you're not directly starting a business, but it takes a lot of people to help us be successful. So I just wanted to acknowledge who's here, and maybe we'll focus our comments on the majority who are either starting or thinking about this crazy idea of starting something. Okay, enough of that. Another couple personal thoughts. One, the reason I'm here is not just to learn, because I really enjoy learning from the community, but to help inform you guys about a few things that I've been doing, but that the community is doing, and also the why. So I think I'd be curious to ask my fellow panelists, like, why are we all doing what we're doing? I grew up in a family business in a little town in Pennsylvania, Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and we ran a campground for about 8 years when I was age 9 through age 16. It was incredibly difficult business. As a family business, went through some floods, some recessions, some oil crisis, a bunch of different challenges. And it formed who I am. That's a whole other story. But one of the business things that I learned from that experience is, thankfully, we were able to get a loan and get through some hard times. And so the two things I really took away from that have informed a lot of what I'm doing now is work ethic and access to capital will help you be successful. And so I'm here to share a little bit of that so you know where I'm coming from. It's around if you put in the work and you get access to the resources, specifically the capital part of the resources, you're highly, highly more likely to be successful than if you don't. So that's a little personal perspective. And then I'm wearing a couple hats too, different ones. I've met several of you in the room because I left Nike after a nice 12-year run about a year and a half ago to start an angel investment network called Oregon Sports Angels. And it was largely because I moved to Oregon in '99 to help start a company called Lucy, which many of you guys have heard of Lucy Active, where I was number 9 on Lucy. Lucy was named after one of our chocolate labs, but I learned a ton from that experience and obviously came to Portland and have never left Portland. And so don't plan to leave Portland, well, once in a while. But that informed a little bit of how do you raise venture capital from the big boys? To your point, it was definitely the boys. Although we did find some females at the time, but that stuck in my head. And so Oregon Sports Angels started largely because the University of Oregon had started a program called the Masters in Sports Product Management, and the founder of that is a former Nike retired spectacular person named Ellen Devlin. She said to a bunch of us in the industry, hey, we want you to help build this program, we want you to hire these kids, we want you to help teach these kids whatever so they can go work in the industry. And she told us they would build a product, and at one point, one of the things she said is, they'll build a product, and I said, what if someone wants to start a company, and she knows me, and she said, why don't you figure out how to help us? I was like, okay. And if you've met Ellen, once she says something, you're kind of on the hook to deliver it. So, sure enough, first class graduated in March 2017. Seems like a lot happened in that time frame. Something was in the water 9 months earlier. Would that be like June 16th? Something must have been crazy. So sure enough, first class, one of the teams comes out and they have a product. They want to start a backpack company, and they're staring at us because we said we would help them, and they're staring at me saying, you said you'd help them. I was still employed at the time. I said, I try to do what I say. I went to the firm a month later, basically, and resigned, partly because the timing was right, and left the company to help start Oregon Sports Angels because I saw the opportunity not just with that group of individuals, happened to be a CEO, happened to be a woman, but also the opportunity to start sports products in the company and fund them, because when we started Lucy, we had to leave the state to get our funding. So it's like a whole longer story, but that's why Oregon Sports Angels started. We'll be a year old in December, have our 5th meeting, and by the end of this year, things finish as they should. We'll have over 20 individual angels who've joined, paid membership dues. That's a project. And actually, I think we'll be tracking to have put about $500,000 to work just in year 1 at 3, possibly 4 companies. 3 of them, I think, 2 are already female CEOs. The 3rd may be. The 4th may not be, but it might be an underrepresented entrepreneur. So I'm personally, it's been a crusade to get us this far, and so I'm very excited. So if you know people, angels or founders of sports product companies, that's that hat. Done. Second thing, because of all that, who in the room knows a guy named Mitch Doherty? So Mitch could not be here, but Mitch is, along with several other people, the founders of a group called Built Oregon. Who's heard of Built Oregon or been at the Built Up Festival? Okay, that's awesome. So second hat is he asked me to join the Built board, which has been phenomenal for exposure to great people. And so I did that, and about 3 or 4 months ago, a woman on the board, also another person on the board named Lori Spencer. If you're in food and beverage, you probably know Lori. We were planning the Built Up Festival, which is an event every October. a week-long series of events for founders, and there was not a women's founder event, and Lori and I looked at each other and said, what the hell, let's do one, and we said, we're doing She Flies. We posted the thing out, and about 100 women showed up, and we're like, holy crap, this is real. It's kind of like today. So they're out there, as you guys have all said, and so the Built Up Festival was the catalyst to what Lori and I have now committed to the Built Oregon board, that we will figure out some version of ongoing programming for female founders throughout the next couple of years. So, we have some work to do, but one of the goals would be like, let's do it in a more cohesive, integrated fashion. Like today, let's leverage some resources instead of sending all of you founders to 7 different meetings. Let's try and consolidate some things and make it a little more efficient for the community. And so, that's too much talking, but it's the Built Up Festival is a great catalyst, and is Built Oregon is, I think, going to play a more increasingly helpful role for the female founders of the community.
I'm so glad to hear about the efficiency. Who has plenty of time on their hands to go to a lot of meetings? Thank you for asking the question of the audience. I wanted to do something similar, but I'd like to break down. Renee had a really great idea to help us better understand who's in the audience. So of those who are starting or have started a company, how many of you have raised capital from a bank? Yeah. If you want to, yeah. How many have had to finance it on personal credit cards? Yeah. How many of you have had venture capital or angel investing?
Angel's good.
What's that? Well, friends and family. Friends and family. Yeah. Yeah, friends and family.
Friends and family.
Who's had a successful exit? Oh, all right. Who's raising now? Yeah.
I'm super curious. I'm guessing we're all gonna. I'm guessing your panelists we're gonna feel a similar way about this one.
Yeah.
The raising money thing is so interesting to me because women don't ask. So can we ask the question again, just out of curiosity? Who in the room is actually raising money at this time? I would like to see your hands go up as high as possible because it is a damn good thing to be confident that you're raising money. It's not so good if you're like, I'll just wear my investor hat for just a split second and say, honey, if you're not like, I'm raising money, you're doomed. You're doomed. Now, it doesn't mean you don't need to know what you're raising and how to go about it and all that, but I'm just like, if you just aren't that confident right now that, no, I need some capital, it's going to be really hard.
So the more confident you are of like, here's my path, here's where I'm going, here's what I want, here's what I need. On the investor side, it's like, okay, great. Like we've got something very strong to work with. I might not agree with everything that you've said, but then we can talk about it. And I know that you have an understanding and confidence to do so. So.
Well, one of the things that I think it's intimidating about raising money, not that I've done it in the private sector, but is understanding the different types of capital. And we don't have time to go into great detail about each of those. But Lee, since you work at Mercy Corps Northwest and you work with very early stage micro entrepreneurs, you're helping them to access non-bank lending. Could you start there and talk about some of that early stage and what characteristics of an entrepreneur match up to what characteristics of capital?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I also just want to add a comment, which is that not every single business that we work with is actually seeking to raise money. And that is okay. If you are not at a stage where capital is actually going to be helping your business, then you are only going to be harming it. Invest in training. Make sure that you are connected in the way that you need to be. Make sure you have the knowledge that you need, and then start going for money. I also want to say that I recognize that there is a cultural component to taking on debt. There are many communities to whom debt is just anathema. If you are a recent immigrant to this country, debt is scary to you, and I understand that, and that's why it's important for organizations like ours, and I'm referring to everyone here, to really build relationships with people before we start talking about entering you into a system of formal finance, which has consequences, honestly. So, let's be intentional about building relationships. That said, the finance products that we offer at Mercy Corps Northwest are specifically available to entrepreneurs who otherwise would not be able to raise funds. If your business is not scalable, for example, if you are starting a food cart, if you are operating a solo venture for catering, if you are a massage therapist who wants to open up your own office, those are not necessarily scalable companies, at least in like a shorter term trajectory for you. We have capital to help those kinds of operations. We offer loans up to $50,000 for people who are qualified, and I'll go into what that means in just a minute. We also offer a grant, and that's what brings a lot of people through our door. The grant is $5,000. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it really can make a big difference, especially if you're using it to match something else. People who are qualified for the grant tend to have lower assets. Okay, so if you're making a lot of money at a full-time job and you own a valuable home, you probably are not going to qualify for this grant. It tends to be for lower income entrepreneurs who really need that assistance. That said, we will count anything against you in terms of your personal assets. Do you have student loan debt? I do. I have a lot. So don't worry. It wipes out a lot of people's total personal value. So I encourage you to visit our website and read more about it. The grant is called the IDA program. It's state funding. It requires you to participate in training over the course of a year, save $1,000 on your own, which we then match with a $5,000 award that you spend on your business. We have lines of credit that we offer. I'm not going to go into everything here, but I just want to say that a lot of people can't access capital because they have been financing their business on their credit card, so we saw a few people like that in the room. If you have a history of problematic credit, that's okay. That's okay. And I'm not saying that in like a skeezy payday lender kind of way. Our organization is here to keep you out of payday lending, okay? So we are here to make sure that you can access safe capital that is an alternative to all of those other sources that are really seeking not only to harm you, but to make sure that your business is never successful.
I wonder, since there's nobody here representing a bank, if you could just talk about what that next hurdle is from getting from a non-bank lender to a bank lender.
Yeah, we work with quite a few banks. We refer clients back and forth all the time. The committee of people who approve the loans that are applied for on a monthly basis at our organization, they're comprised of members of local banks who are supportive of entrepreneurship. So what that referral process looks like on our end is that we get a lot of people sent in our direction from Umpqua or from Beneficial State Bank, who is a sponsor of this event, by the way, today. We also will refer people out to banks. If we look at your credit report, if we look at your business's revenues, if we look at your personal financial history and we see that you're looking strong, we don't want your business. It's time for you to move on into the world of traditional banking. We're happy to help advise you on what you should be looking for, but we're not here to serve everybody. We're here to serve people who really need it.
And Amanda, you did some crowdfunding, right? Could you talk about the world of crowdfunding a bit?
Yeah. So the world of crowdfunding has changed drastically even over the last 5 years. It used to be a really novel thing to do, and people could really rely on the novelty of it to raise extra funds. Now it's extremely competitive and even saturated in some places. And so you do have to do it very strategically. I think one of the greatest benefits to going that route, and the reason I raised my hand earlier and said we're all always raising money, is because I think if you're not raising money from a VC or an angel, you're raising money or grants, then you're raising money from your customers. And that was really the direction that I chose to go with my personal company. And that was for multiple reasons. One, marketing. Two, we're a B Corp with a story and a brand, and our brand is one of our biggest competitive advantages. And it was only going to benefit us to onboard other brand ambassadors, so to speak, or influencers that were going to come on and help rally our mission of what we're trying to do, in addition to bring our product to the market. And so, we came out of that with about 1,500 customers that were now in production mode of fulfilling those orders. but that's 1,500 people I didn't have that now I can kind of let in behind the scenes to help cheer us on and to help share and spread our story and to help tell other people about our brand. And so there's just this like climactic buildup that you get with that you can't always get. And the other reason we chose to go that route is for those of you who've pursued equity funding, you'll find one of the biggest things that those investors want to see is traction. They want to know that the market wants what you're trying to sell. And if you can do a crowdfunding campaign successfully, it demonstrates that the market wants what you have. So I did that to leverage my pitch for any sort of other types of funding that we wanted to pursue. So it was really hard. Don't get me wrong. It was extremely hard. It's not, you're not going to just flippantly put something together in a month and throw it out. It becomes a full-time job, just like any other sort of funding and investing. The difference is I came out of it with customers versus now I've got this chunk of money maybe that I've spent and I still now have to go find the customer, right? So 2 birds with 1 stone.
Kate, could you talk about what qualifications a company would need to get to a place where angels would actually be interested?
So a quick, and it's actually awesome. I totally agree with what you said. I tend to be super confident and optimistic, and I'm like, yes, the loan piece. You shouldn't raise money unless and until you're ready, and ready means what we kind of just described. So I totally support that. I also just sort of make the double down on be confident when you go, whether it's for a micro loan, for a crowdfunding campaign, or for angels, or for venture, whatever. There are a couple of angel groups in town, and so quick tutorial, and as you progress through the funding ladder, because I had no experience, I was a little bit of an angel. One of my first check, and I was happy to see the Wild Fang thing. So my first angel check was to Emma and Jules starting Wild Fang. I wrote the check on the back of a card just like that down in Chinatown. I was like, you go girls, and it was like, okay, here we go, get in the game, do it, right? And then, but I had at the time, no intent to start an angel network. But when the Oregon Sports Angels thing sort of became like, oh, this is, there's something here. Let's figure this out. I did 2 things immediately. One, I joined a group called Thai Angels, which is the Indus Entrepreneurs Network. It's a global network. There's a very strong chapter here in Portland run by Nitin Rai, who also runs the Elevate Venture Capital Fund, and he's a strong proponent and an investor in the underserved entrepreneurial community. I joined that to learn how an angel network worked. And then I also joined Oregon Venture Fund, which at the time was Oregon Angel Fund, because it's a different model. It's an investment fund model. So just so you guys know, when I talk to people about it, like I was 5 years ago, I'm like, well, what does it mean to be an angel? You can be a friend and family. So anyone who got a check from a friend or someone from Pipeline or someone, they're probably a friend and family, first-time angel. They won't consider themselves an angel. But the 2 more formal ways where you're like, no, you're kind of an angel. This is what you're doing. You're writing checks to people. The 2 models are through a network like Thai or like Oregon Sports Angels, or through a fund. And the difference really is, one, we set up as a nonprofit also because we just wanted the founders, we don't want any overhead. Everything I do is volunteer. All of the network members do volunteer work because we want the founders to get 100% of that check. So the challenge for the entrepreneur is if you come pitch to a network of angels, you have to win individuals over. There's not like a decider fund manager. There's sort of, you're selling to 15 or however many people are in the room. And then those individuals will decide we're interested, and if we're interested, we'll follow up and start a due diligence process. And that's how we've proceeded as Oregon Sports Angels. That's how Thai works. On the sort of the other side of that is through Oregon Venture Fund or Portland Seed Fund, or probably people know Julie Harrelson Cascade Angels Fund. There are several others in the state that do early stage, including some consumer investing. Those are more like a mutual fund model. So if you're an angel, you write 1 check up front, and then the fund acts on your behalf over the course of a year or the term of the fund, and they kind of evaluate deals based on their larger goal for the portfolio. So if you're familiar with how markets work, I told my story. My dad was a stockbroker, so luckily I learned a lot as a child, but stocks and funds. So I view angel networks as kind of stock picking, and in my case, it's like, founder picking. And it sounds horrible, but that's kind of what we're doing. And then, or betting maybe. And then the second is through a fund, which is a mutual fund-like model and a little different due diligence process, a little different sort of structure and rigor, et cetera. So I hope that's somewhat helpful to the group because it is complicated. And so again, back to the beginning, and to go up a little more confidently is like, let's help you guys demystify some of the stuff. And I'm happy to answer any questions and have some answers. And if we don't have the answers, like this group will have a lot of the answers for you.
Okay, so Renee Hayes told us more about like what the different types of angel investing, what types are out there, but how as an entrepreneur do you actually get ready to go for that capital, and how do you know you're ready, and what, say for example, what does Accelerate do to help entrepreneurs get ready to make that ask?
So, as I mentioned earlier, I actually am good at math. One of my favorite things is financial modeling. So when you need to go out and raise money is actually not a mystery to be solved. It is a spreadsheet to be crunched. Very serious. There's also some other tools. I'm going to throw out from another woman entrepreneur here in Oregon, Live Plan from Sabrina Patterson is a great tool if you don't feel as comfortable in doing something in Excel. But basically, you just sit down and start working through, what do I want to sell? How much does it cost to make or deliver it? How much am I selling it for? And what does that look like over time? When you do that, at some point, your numbers are going to end up with a negative number at that bottom line. And so the idea of investment is that you take that investment so you actually don't hit that negative bottom line. So you understand where your trajectory is going and how you're growing over time with that money. And then you can actually very clearly, one of the things that helps you raise that arm high is you can say, here is the money I need, and here is what it is going to, and here is what I expect it to result in. The financial projections can be very uncomfortable with some people. The one thing that I know as a guarantee is whatever you put together is absolutely wrong. So embrace it. I have never seen anybody that set up a financial projection and be like, this is down to the penny. Yeah, it's not, but it's an exercise in helping you evaluate the different inputs and outputs in your business. And so it's just really helping you think through the different things. So it's going to be wrong. It's okay. The goal is not to get it right. The goal is to get it reasonable. So put together some financial modeling, use some of the tools out there. So that way, as the entrepreneur, you can understand here is the money that I need to fund my business, or here's where I need to change my pricing structure so I don't need outside funding for my business. And then once you do that, start talking to people. As we mentioned in the beginning of your business, it's very hard to secure that traditional bank lending. However, there are actually a lot of very friendly bankers in town who are willing to talk to you without soliciting your business, and just talking about what does your trajectory look like with your banking relationship, with the potential for lending. What can lending do for you in the future, even if it can't do it for you now? They are actually both men and women who are very excited to work with women entrepreneurs and understand that in many cases, you're not going to be their banking client in the beginning, and you might actually not be their banking client for 3 years, but they're invested in seeing you succeed. So there are people you can go out there and talk to at an alternative lender, at a traditional lender, ask questions. And then, when you're out there seeking advice, the more information you come into the conversation with, and the more clear of a question you can ask, like somebody on this panel, the better we can help guide you. Either connect you to somebody in our network, which I think is probably about half of our job, day in and day out, is connecting people, or kind of giving you our own knowledge and experience.
Private equity, you've pitched those kinds of things, and I'm just curious if you could just demystify it for us a little bit, and perhaps because of your work with the Zebras Network, help us understand what is it that venture capitalists are currently looking for, perhaps in a way to maybe guide people away from looking for venture right now, depending on the kind of company that you're building.
Yeah, and there's venture and venture, right? I mean, so the traditional venture model is chasing unicorns for a reason, right? So they're chasing one high growth potential company in their portfolio because they try to make the fund. And the analogy I've heard, and I'm from Germany, what do I know about baseball? But it's like you're swimming. Basically, the business model of the traditional venture fund is you're swinging for a home run at every at bat. Right? And so that's why you see these strategies for aggressive growth, for customer churn, for land grabs, that whole language of, sort of get the king of the hill. That is the venture capital model. because it is the only way they can make their business model for the fund pencil. Little known secret, most venture funds, if they return 1.2x or 1.5x, that is a ridiculously successful venture fund, right? But you only hear about the individual portfolio companies, right? The Facebooks and the other with their gazillion billion dollar valuations, right? And that's sort of the narrative around which then entrepreneurs orient themselves when they think about the growth of their company. So there are a couple of things wrong with that, right? One is from your company perspective, it may not make sense to pursue an aggressive growth strategy. You may have no interest in a monopoly position in the industry that you're trying to influence. And this becomes particularly obvious when you think about my company, for example. Here I am in the philanthropy industry. Like, what does it even mean to be the Facebook of social change, right? It's absurd. Like, what would an exit strategy look like? Or, you know, what Mada's company, Switchboard, does. Basically reforming higher education through the lens of, you know, what if we all create a community with each other while we're in college and make that sort of the beginnings of a lasting relationship, as opposed to, oh, it's just about the fundraising of alumni, right? And so the venture model may not be right for the type of company you're building, right? If you want that quick exit, if you have these aspirations, venture is right for you, but it may not be right for many, many companies that we're building. And women, oddly enough, tend to build companies that are solving more complex issues. They're not solving for, you know, what was the latest, robot pizzas? I mean, come on, right? Whatever, or scooters. And so the other thing that's wrong is, so the other piece about venture is what we're now seeing is we're actually seeing the emergence of a new breed of venture funds, right? So we're now beginning to see some innovation on the VC business model itself. And there's some great writing that coincidentally comes out of some of the Zebra investors. Anea Ben-Ami writes very eloquently about building a new VC model that is predicated on nurturing a whole portfolio of companies. So this is an RBI strategy, right? Round it in baseball. And now you have eight companies out of 10 that might succeed. And you can actually model this out. And I think the family office that he works for, their VC fund is returning 2.3 or 2.5x. Right? So it makes more sense economically. You don't have to be an impact investor. It's just a better business model. And so that's part of what we're seeing, some really interesting innovation now with capital tools.
Twofold questions. One, I would love for you to speak a little bit about the 10x model, 10 times return that we hear about quite often, and the 3 to 5 times for angels more frequently. So compared to the 1.2 to 2.5 return that you just spoke about. And then the other is more related to our hand raising. I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts in general, because there's obviously more of us who are raising money than there are people who are giving money out. So I think that some of the slow hand raise is related much more to not wanting to seem desperate versus feeling confident about asking for it. So I'd love your thoughts around that as well.
The 1.2, 10x, the math, the sort of the numbers you mentioned. I think you mentioned sort of the fund overall might be shooting for a 1.2, 1.3 like overall. The 10x is the aspirational, the unicorn. That's all you hear about. And I've been on both sides of the fence, mostly on the losing side. We're like, no, nobody wants to talk about their losses, but guess what? Yeah, there's tons of them that don't work out. Lots of companies fail. Lots of companies are sold at a reduced rate. You know, there's that's just, you don't hear about it because who wants to talk about going to Vegas and going broke? Nobody. I don't know if anyone. So I think some of that is as they say, I hate the word optics, but that's kind of the optics of the industry. Like they want to say, if you're not going to be a 10xer, the reality is almost nobody is. So I think that's just sort of a maybe explanation of that. And then second part was, hold on. Oh,
versus looking desperate.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really interesting. Sometimes it's just personality. Sometimes it's maybe gender. I don't know. I mean, I mentioned Women Don't Ask, which is a great book if you haven't read it, and there's definitely a gender component to being confident and to your points earlier, sort of knowing, being educated enough so that you can play the game at the proper skill level. I'm an athlete. Obviously, it's like I didn't know how to shoot baskets until I learned how to shoot baskets, and then you get like, oh, I can shoot baskets, right? So you have to go through that journey to learn, oh, I don't even know what a convertible note is. And like, I didn't either. But guess what? You can learn it because you're all pretty freaking smart people and someone will teach you. and you just go and learn that stuff, and then you're like, oh, I can do baskets, I can ask for a convertible note, I understand how it works. So some of it is just literally the ability to know what you don't know, find people who can teach you that stuff, go into the game much more educated, and then be confident. Because I'm going to generalize and say, most likely the guys are confident.
So one thing we're doing at Zebras Unite is doing a bit of a landscape analysis of these alternative capital tools out there, together with the Kaufman Foundation and Startup Colorado, to not just demystify it, but create a bit of a sort of a roadmap and a directory. Like, where do you go, right? Who are the new kinds of VC funds that are looking for companies, individual companies in their portfolio that can deliver a 3 to 5x over some amount of time and use a, this is where it gets a little hairy, an equity-like debt instrument, right? And so they actually don't take a position in your company necessarily. And there's a growing number of these sorts of funds, but when you look at them online, you know, an indie VC is difficult to distinguish from any other VC fund, right? And so that's part of the work, the programmatic work at Zebras is to, if it feels like it's really difficult to find these resources, it's because it is. It's not because you're stupid or looking in the wrong place. It's just really difficult to find sort of and understand the landscape and sort of navigate it.
One more quick thing on that confidence piece. You know, the way that I interpret that is that we can have a conversation back and forth and ask questions and you can respond. It's not as though, you know, sorry, male allies in the room, just throwing the guys under the bus, but it's not about just going in there with your chest puffed and saying, I know everything. It's going in there saying, here is what I think. I'm feeling pretty confident, but I'm confident enough for you to trouble my assumptions and to talk to me about it. Because the other thing is, like, shit's gonna go sideways sometimes. And it's not about the fact that that hasn't happened, it's what do you do when that happens? How do you respond to it? Because, you know, as you talk about that sense of desperation, I think, you know, when things have gone awry and you hit that sense of desperation on the investor side or even on a mentor side, that can be a little scary to be like, okay, well, you know, where do you want to go with this? Like, what's going on with you? What are you addressing, like, personally and professionally, not addressing personally and professionally to get through this? Because, you know, there are going to be some very hairy situations. You're going to have moments where you feel like you're going to throw up. That's okay. We all do. And so how do you respond to those situations, I think, is important. So it's not just about always knowing everything all the time. It's how you respond to those situations.
To learn how to ask for help. I was not born learning how to ask for help. I had to learn how to ask for help, and now I'm pretty good at it. I'm still not good enough, but to your point, I think there's a real skill in learning how to ask for help. So you don't go completely underwater and you don't go throw up in the back, like whatever. So, but it's really hard to ask for help, and it's hard, especially when we're, you know, sending you the, hey, be confident. Like, no, I'm super confident, but guess what? There's so much I don't know. I need help all the time. But it takes some guts to ask for help, probably as much or more than to ask for money. So I look for investors or for candidates and founders who are like, hey, I know what I know and I know how to ask those questions and all that, but I also know that I need help. And then it's a question, okay, well, what kind of help do you think you need, and how does the network help? So
yeah. It's question and also I think statement, and it's building on that, so it might be a good way to leave everything, is aside from the money raising part, I think as women, it takes us a little bit longer to build something. And, you know, I've heard Marta speak before, and she speaks about how women build like up a mountain with a strong base, and men are kind of that inverted, like, going quick, and then maybe there's not a lot of, you know, stuff there. And so I think that that's something that's also being gentle with ourselves and understanding that, you know, we're building slower because maybe we're being intentional about it. We're connectors, but we're also like oftentimes caregivers, you know, for either parents or children. Then we don't have these huge resources that are available out there. And so I think remembering that and then finding your connection to any of these amazing groups to find that tribe. So thank you. And I think that builds on all of that.
And yes, and I think that strong base is critical to like a truly successful business. And in that cycle, you know, kind of stereotypically as women, myself included, you can get stuck in that, you know, perfect being the enemy of good enough. So, you know, doing that, building your base, but understanding like, yeah, I could, that should be better. It's like, but does that have to be better to get where you need to go? And so finding those moments where, you know, it's good enough to get out there. It's not as good as you would want to take it, but let that happen sometimes too. Yeah.
Well, join me in thanking the panelists. And we'll be sticking around. What's up next, Susan? Can I hand the mic over to you?